You're welcome back and you're still watching Newsnight. We're live from Nigeria's capital in Abuja. The Supreme Court has fixed October 31 to hear two separate appeals seeking to nullify the eligibility of the All Progressives Congress APC in the 2019 governorship election in Imo State to remove Hope Uzodinma as governor. A notice of hearing served on all parties in the appeal was obtained by our correspondent. The People's Democratic Party and Action People's Party are asking the Supreme Court to give effect to its judgment delivered in 2019 disqualifying Uche Nwosu of the APP from the Imo governorship election on grounds of double nomination. They argue that APC cannot have the governorship in person of Uzodinma when the court had already voided the candidacy of Nwosu, who was nominated by APC for the said 2019 governorship poll. The PDP is also asking the Supreme Court to return its candidate, Emeka Ihedioha, as winner of the election, since APC was precluded from sponsoring two candidates in the governorship election. Tietie, a RISE analyst and a lawyer, is here to look at the issues. Good evening and welcome to Newsnight.
My pleasure.
It looks a little funny and it looks like something is getting set to be torpedoed.
Well, it's the Supreme Court moment, because the Supreme Court ought to have resolved these issues. There's no reason why the Supreme Court ought to have allowed a matter which was ripe for its pronouncement 3 years ago and left it and allowed an election to hold, despite the fact that there was a major contention that the APC did not have a candidate in the person of Hope Uzodinma. It did not have a candidate because the Supreme Court had ruled in a case before it. I think that was brought by Uche Unadi of the Action People's Alliance, and then which had also, which was supported also by the PDP, that having pronounced that Uche Nwosu was sponsored by Action Alliance and the All Progressives Congress, he was disqualified. There was no fact as to the fact that the APC quickly did the primaries that was acceptable, and then Hope Uzodinma became his candidate. Even if there was a valid primary to that extent, the fact that the Supreme Court had made that pronouncement, APC didn't have a candidate for that election.
Let's just quickly ask a simple question here. Did INEC register Hope Uzodinma as the candidate of APC?
Oh, well, of course, that's why it participated in the 2019 elections. But
so where is the lacuna here?
The big lacuna is the fact that the Supreme Court, just before the election, had said that the APC didn't have a candidate. So the APC could not have had a candidate, whether or not INEC recognized Hope Uzodinma as a candidate. And the applications now before the Supreme Court, by the PDP, and interestingly, including the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, all arguing that if the PDP's own is straightforward, it's likewise that of APC, but I mean APGA, but they're different in the sense that if APC didn't have a candidate in 2019, which means you can't put something on nothing, and which means there will be no governor of APC in Imo State. Now, PDP is simply saying restore Emeka Ihedioha as governor, while our Progressive Grand Alliance is calling for a fresh election because it expressly asks the court. You know, the interesting thing about the legal process is that it is only when what you ask the court that it gives to you.
They say the court is not a Father Christmas.
Yes. So our Progressive Grand Alliance is saying we want a fresh election because we had argued and pointed to you as a court. But you see, what is really, really terrible here is why, for goodness sake, did the court not make that pronouncement in enforcing its own judgment before the elections to make things clear?
You just said that that matter wasn't brought immediately before it. Should they adjudicate in a matter that was not brought before it?
It was indeed brought before it. You see, the politics of the court, and this is what the Supreme Court was faced. Late Justice Wednesday, or Justice of the Supreme Court, had said the Imo matter, referring to the pronouncement of Uzodinma as governor, will continually haunt the Supreme Court. So I feel a sense of relief that the Supreme Court has had the courage, despite the provisions of Section 285 of the Constitution, which limits the time for hearing. The Supreme Court does now have mustered the courage to now say no, it wants to hear and put a finality to a pronouncement it had made and an application that has been made before it. It cannot keep it in abeyance. Well, I mean, why would an application be made to the Supreme Court to enforce its judgment before the election, and the Supreme Court refused? But we see the Supreme Court leadership that has now changed so you know what I mean. There's a new Chief Justice of Nigeria, and you can see a directive that make that application, let that application come for hearing. There is no reason. The Supreme Court must make a pronouncement that you had ruled that APC did not have a candidate that could have gone into an election in 2019. So how come it was allowed and you, as a court, also pronounced that candidate to be governor? So the conundrum here, the weight here, the burden here is on the Supreme Court. It must discharge justice in the matter.
Don't you empathize with the Supreme Court
of
Nigeria with the myriads of cases that they have and very few on the bench?
I not empathize with them. I sympathize and pity the Supreme Court, particularly on this one. How is it going to resolve it? Yeah. Because it is tied with the constitutional provision. But you see, it may have a way of escape in the sense that it is not asking it to revisit a matter or review a matter or a judgment. It is being asked to simply enforce a judgment it has made. Now, if you look at the inherent
that judgment emanated from the High Court.
And then it went through, though it's a pre-election matter, that went through all the stages of the appellate process.
Yeah.
Now, the Supreme Court has immense powers under Section 6 of the Constitution, granting, and you see, as lawyers, we say, we try to hide it under the inherent powers of the court to do justice. So the court at this time must now sit down and ask itself. It has made decisions like this in Zamfara. And then it will not say, look,
would it be discretionary here, or would they be talking facts of the law?
No, I think they will be talking law. It's not. You see, the facts are clear. Yeah. The law is this, because whatever pronouncement the Supreme Court has made becomes a law. The law that is on ground now is that the interpretation is that for the purpose of the double domination that Uche Nwosu enjoyed from Action Alliance and APC, nullify the fact that APC didn't have a candidate. So how come as a court you also pronounce the party that ought not to have a candidate as the winner of the election of Imo State governorship election?
What went wrong there?
So it's politics of the court, and that is what the court appears to be set to correct. The court will now start asking itself, because I believe the prophecies of late Justice Wednesday has started to haunt the court so quickly by saying, look, the Imo matter will haunt you as a Supreme Court if you don't address it. And in this case, that is maybe the only reason why the court will dare to say, go back and do something that would have actually hurt itself. Where it failed to have made a pronouncement 3 years ago, it has now had the courage to say, no, we must make a pronouncement. And I think that should be more of a credit to the Chief Justice of Nigeria, because this is coming under his watch. The expectation is that Nigerians are watching very closely. On the 31st, perhaps there will be an outright judgment, because the briefs have already been canvassed, they've been submitted and canvassed, arguments have been canvassed. So, and again, I like the fact that the PDP lawyer from the reports I read is saying that courts, we are not asking you to review your judgment. We're simply saying, give effect to your judgment. If you say that APC didn't have a candidate, then simply declare that APC doesn't have a candidate to the extent
that there was an error in that judgment there.
Well, there is no error. There is a judgment on the Supreme Court, which is the fact, which is the state of affair now.
Is there anything wrong if, the Supreme Court, with such brilliant minds, great philosophers and the rest, if they find it that, look, there was a miscarriage of justice. What is there to
look
reverse?
You see, I cannot attempt to, prognosticate what the Supreme Court will
what
do.
their minds,
Yes.
what's on their minds.
I may know that, but because of the subjudicial nature of the situation now, I perhaps may not want to. However, look at it. This matter is straightforward in one way. The difficulty is in the resolution. The straightforward nature of the matter is that APC didn't have a candidate when it went into election. Yet the APC, a self-declared candidate, so to speak, won the election in the person of Hope Uzodinma. Now, in that case, and affirmed by the Supreme Court. Now, what would the Supreme Court do when it now goes back to its earlier judgment before the election, where it affirmed that APC didn't have a candidate? So the Supreme Court it has a very straightforward position in that regard. The difficulty is this: what will now happen? It will either think of restoring Mecca Hedioha if it stands by its earlier decision, or will it agree with the All Progressive Grand Alliance that a fresh election be conducted in Imo State? Whereas Hope Uzodinma has been governor for such a long time and is hoping to get re-elected. So this conundrum is an issue of justice, is an issue of politics, or to be resolved. This burdensome resolution is upon the Supreme Court to give to Nigerians, and that's what's making it exciting. And again, the Supreme Court will now see this as a golden opportunity, possibly to redeem itself concerning the Imo issue.
Well, redemption time now. But again, we're no Nostradamus, the man who saw tomorrow. Let's wait for tomorrow to come, and the Supreme Court will do what every Nigerian, like to say, is right for the growth of Nigeria's jurisprudence
and democracy.
And democracy. Thank you very much,
My pleasure.
Frank Tietie, lawyer and Arise analyst.